This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and today I have a returning guest. He's been a WWE wrestler, wrestled the likes of Macho Man Randy Savage and many top stars, WWE ring announcer, referee, leader of ring crew on the West Coast. He trained Sting, he trained the Ultimate Warrior, countless others. He was even in the UWF for a period of time. Big Bill Anderson, how are you doing today, sir? I know you're a little nervous.
I'm doing great, Devin. Thank you for having me on your show. And yes, I'm a nervous wreck. Our election for our presidency is in the balance, hanging here with every minute that goes by for the next probably 24 hours, 48 hours perhaps, as they count the votes and decide who is going to become president again or stay president. And I'll just go ahead and say it if it's okay. I'm leaning toward Trump. Okay, and so is superstar Billy Graham. I have been in contact with Billy, and we are very much on the same course of action that we believe that Donald Trump is the best man for this country at this time. And I know we're not here to talk politics, and I realize that. I apologize for bringing politics into this. It's wrestling, and but a lot of our lives are hanging in the balance. I turned 64 years old next Thursday, a week from this Thursday. So I'm already on Social Security, and because I'm retired basically, and I just don't want it affected my income for the future by who is president. And I know if Trump stays president, I know I have no effect on my money that I get from the government for what I paid into my Social Security, and I can't risk that for my older age. Whether that be one more day of life or 15 or 20 more years of life, I don't know, but it's scary. Like I told you, it's very scary.
I can imagine. And on a positive note, I did get a copy of one of your many books here, which I have enjoyed. And I get fans who know that I'm friends with Billy Graham too, ask me all the time about how do I get a Billy Graham autograph? Well, your books come with a Billy Graham autograph.
Yeah, Billy has been very gracious to sign my books. He did the forward for the book. He put a lot of time and thought into the forwarding for my book. He was the appropriate man to ask to do that forward, and he stepped up and did that. And he said he would sign each copy of the book, and I'm blessed by that. Billy has been a tremendous friend for decades upon decades. Since I was a much younger man, I have been friends with Billy. During this COVID lockdown of most of the country, it's really affected a lot of us. And the biggest thing it's affected with me is my luncheons that I used to have with Billy. They've been non-existent since February was our last luncheon, where we would spend 3, 4 hours, 2 hours, 5 hours, whatever it is, shooting the crap about life, politics, wrestling, whatever. And I miss that time spent with Billy because of COVID lockdowns here in Phoenix, in Arizona, and all over the country. It's really affected a lot of us. I mean, it's affected everybody. But personally, it's affected me in that my friend, superstar, I cannot spend that quality time with him that I would like. And that's really sad.
Yeah, the saddest part of the lockdown for me is I wasn't able to see my grandmother for 6 months, and she just passed away yesterday. They made an exception for the past few months because they knew it was coming, but to not be able to see her through that time was brutal. But if you want to let people know where they can get this, it's actually the only Billy Graham autograph that I have.
Right. Oh, really?
And you autograph it too, so it's a double autograph, and it's
right.
$40. It's hardly anything.
Well, it's $20 US. You might have paid more because of
the shipping to Canada.
To Canada, foreign shipping, and I say foreign being Canada. That is a little bit more, but in the United States, I charge $20, and that includes shipping prices to the U.S. for 50 states and Puerto Rico, for that matter. And so it is only $20, and you can go on my website at www.bigbillanderson.us. And there's a link in there. I have 2 books. Besides the one you just held up, Devin, I have a tribute book to my friends of Mexico that have passed away. And my good friend Eddie Guerrero is on the cover of this one. And means a lot to me that I did that book. These are tribute books to people that have passed away, that influenced my life, that meant the world to me. In the book that you're holding there, with the red cover, that Superstar did the forward for, I talk about Ernie Ladd, the Big Cat Ernie Ladd, the Sheik, Road Warrior Hawk, Dick the Bruiser, the Crusher, the Kangaroos. There's more wrestlers from the 70s and 80s and 90s. The Big Boss Man, Andre the Giant, of course, the Fabulous Moolah, one of the sweetest women I've ever known in my life. But I talk about those kind of people in that book. In Mexico, the Mexico book is about Hispanic wrestlers, luchadors that I encountered through my career wrestling in Mexico, Mexico City and Guadalajara back in the 80s and early 90s. Myself and Tim Patterson, we held the Mexican version of the World Trios Championship for 3.5 years or so, wrestling the likes of Mil Mascaras, his brothers Dos Caras and El Psychedelico, Los Villanos, Los Brazos, kind of the who's who of Hispanic wrestlers we were in the ring with back in our younger days, and in the good days, and days that I cherish the memory very much. And the other book, talking about, wrestlers like Professor Toru Tanaka and Red Bastien, my mentor in life, Big John Studd. These were such dear men that I was in the ring with and traveled with and worked on shows with. Red Bastien, we lived together for half a year while we were training Sting and the Ultimate Warrior and the Angel of Death and Strangler Steve DeSalvo. So, I had a special bond with these guys. And as you know, I don't have to tell you this, but in case some of your listeners don't understand, the wrestlers have a bond. We have a bond. We put our lives on the line in the ring, and we fight hard to entertain the fans. And our friendships go back long ways when you're traveling on the road with wrestlers. And in the case of Tim Patterson, my partner for many years, we were in 4 countries: Canada, Mexico, Japan, and the U.S. together. You forge a bond that is unbeatable and carries you through. You risk your life, you put your life on the line, and you would do anything for these men. They're your friends and your partners. And I miss so many of them that are gone. Hercules Hernandez, and we just lost. We just lost Road Warrior Animal. What a beautiful man he was. And I'm so sad that he's not here. He was a big Trump supporter. I'm so sad he's not here to see how the elections going forward here. And if Trump wins, I'm sad that somebody like Joe Laurinaitis won't be here to see and share the victory of that win, because he was a big Trump supporter. But I miss a lot of my friends in wrestling, and that's why I've written about them in my books. I need to do more books. I need to get more motivated. Honestly, as I've gotten older, I've lost some motivation. And but we lost the Ultimate Warrior a few years back, and what a beautiful man he was. And I'm so proud. One of my proudest moments of my wrestling career, my whole career involving wrestling, was that Jim Hellwig on his Hall of Fame induction speech mentioned me and Red Bastien in his speech. You just can't beat stuff like that. To know I was on his mind in the last 48 hours of his life, I'll carry that to my grave. That's one of the proudest moments of my entire career. A man that had that kind of success.
Now, since I interviewed you last, which, by the way, people can look that one up, there's a picture of Bill and Chris Jericho on the cover of the 3-hour interview, which is very detailed and contains maybe you talking for about 25 minutes about training Sting and the Ultimate Warrior. But you told a story in that about Dynamite Kid spiking one of your ring crew boys' drink.
Yeah.
But we all know that you were part of the ring crew and you had an issue with an interview I did with the brother of Tom Cole, who was one of the, I guess WWE gave him some type of settlement. Lee Cole, to my knowledge, if you look it up, there was no over-the-table settlement with him, and you questioned his credibility. I questioned some of his credibility as well. Some of the stuff he says made more sense than others, but what was it specifically you wanted to say about your experience?
I can tell you, I remember our conversation online, and I'll just say it like I said it. I called him a media whore. I believe he was looking for publicity. The Cole brothers were a lot of looking for publicity. I think Tom Cole was his name, the ring boy. I believe he was gay, and he enjoyed whatever he got out of that. I don't know, but I dispute the fact that that like I can't say that like Mel Phillips and Terry Garvin and these kind of guys, Pat Patterson, all these guys aren't gay or bisexual, whatever, and did something with somebody, but they make it, Lee Cole makes it sound like Mel Phillips just went from arena to arena with young boys all over the country. And I could just tell you, in the western half of the country, I was a ring crew chief. Terry Garvin set me up in my position, and I never saw any of that, ever. And I was around Mel Phillips countless shows on the West Coast where he did the ring announcing before I was doing ring announcing. This in the mid 80s, I was a ring crew chief. In the late 80s, from 87-ish to 80 to about 93, I was a ring announcer in Los Angeles, San Diego, Bakersfield, Fresno, and many other cities. But I was around around Mel Phillips quite a bit. I never saw any of that, any negative behavior. He was the ultimate professional, Mel Phillips was. And I could say the same personally from Terry Garvin or Pat Patterson, both. The ultimate professionals. Never saw any of that behavior. I can only say what I saw and what I felt. And I was around him with a lot of young guys working on my ring crew. A lot of shows, I mean, hundreds of shows from Reno, Nevada to all the way to Seattle, to Portland, to Phoenix, Tucson. I was around a long time with WWF. Never saw any of that behavior. And I don't know if this was an exclusive New England area thing where Mel was active doing that with Cole, with Tom Cole. I don't know. But I can just say that in listening to the interview, it just seemed like Lee Cole was just enjoying the publicity a little too much. And it just sounds like they were bigger marks for wrestlers than anything else. And sometimes a male mark would maybe do something with a male, just like a female mark does things with wrestlers. We call them rats, unfortunately. It's a term that was used many decades ago in wrestling. But it's not a nice word, but it's just a word that was used. And I have a feeling maybe Tom Cole was a rat. I don't know. But I never met the guy. I don't know him from Adam. I've never met his brother. But I just got an uneasy feeling watching the interview that you did. I just felt there's something wrong here. Just a personal opinion.
Ricky Rodriguez has kind of a related question. Is there any wrestling scandals over the years that you witnessed personally, because you've been around for decades in all the major companies?
Oh, wow. Wrestling scandals. Well, as I talked about in my long interview with you, I mean, I was around the whole David Schultz and the anti-black sentiment that he had with Mr. T and that sort of thing. But I really can't think offhand, and I apologize. I can't think of necessarily a wrestling scandal that I was around, honestly.
No problem. Good answer, honest answer. Malik wants to know what your most memorable or favorite wrestling moment was.
Well, probably for my name value, which I was a very low level wrestler in the whole scheme of the business. But when I got a win over Paul Orndorff in 1983 at the LA Sports Arena in front of a sellout crowd of nearly 17,000 people, I pinned Paul Orndorff in the middle of the ring, and that kind of an accolade was a big thing for me at that time in the early 80s. It really pushed a lot of momentum, and I got a lot more work on the independent circuit because of that, because the independent promoters around Los Angeles were watching a lot of these shows, and they saw me pin Paul Orndorff. So I was being used a lot more on other shows. And this was before, I have to clarify, before Paul signed his contract with Vince and became Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. He was just passing through. And in the old days of wrestling, especially in Los Angeles, guys would come through LA, like Paul was coming from the Atlanta wrestling office, coming through and spending just one show before going on to Japan to wrestle. So Pat Patterson, being the matchmaker and booker, gave direction on Paul was unimportant in the scheme of things. I was more important as a local wrestler to be favored in that night. And I took that as a very large compliment from Pat, that he had that much faith and trust in my wrestling ability. And he knew that the fans would believe it. And it did shock the fans. I mean, they were very surprised because they had seen Paul, I think, on TBS, or, it was a different era of wrestling. They had the cable stations of wrestling. It wasn't like it is, with all the mega channels now and everything promoting wrestling. It was real different back in those days. So Paul was not a national wrestling star necessarily. He soon became one for sure. And I did wrestle him about 6 or 8, 9 months later. And believe me, I lost very fast to him.
You mentioned earlier your book about Mexican wrestlers and the time you spent over there. I've been told by a few wrestlers that have been over there that the drug scene is a little bit more obvious in the dressing rooms than in the US. These guys are more recent, like Conan and Juventud, and Rene Dupree said he has had some friends that noticed that. But did you ever notice anything like that back there?
I can tell you of one instance, and it wasn't even in Mexico, but it was involving, I don't even think I should probably say his name, but he was one of the largest named wrestlers in the 70s and 80s of Mexican wrestling. Once approached me in the United States in Los Angeles at a show and asked me if I had cocaine for him. And I said, no, I don't. Actually, to be honest with you, that happened twice with 2 different superstars of Mexican wrestling, but never, I can tell you honestly, from the 80s and to the mid 90s, I spent from 82 to 96 in a lot of wrestling in Mexico, many, many, many shows. And I never saw any of that then in Mexico. I saw it more from those same stars coming to the United States asking for drugs, which was really weird now that I think about it. I hadn't really thought about it until you said that or asked me.
There is a picture of you on your Facebook page with Mick Foley over in Japan. Cameron wants to know your thoughts on Mick Foley.
Oh, I think Mick's one of the nicest human beings you could ever meet. He's down to earth. I think he's just a tremendous person that has made the most of his wrestling abilities. He knew he wasn't a technical wrestler, but he knew he had a great threshold for pain, obviously, and he put himself in the position to make a lot of money. He is a very intelligent man. He's a good family man. All the times I was around Mick, all he talked about was his family. And he's a very solid guy. Could not say a negative word about Mick if you gave me 2 years to talk. Great guy.
Barlight Broker wants to know if wrestlers were always paid cash back in the day. I know in my experience, it's almost always been cash unless it's been for a major company.
No, usually cash, but I can tell you one instance in particular. I wish I would have been paid in cash instead of a check, and that's I learned the hard way. Don't take a check from Herb Abrams with the UWF. I worked a series of shows with him in New York for his UWF in 1991, I believe. I don't think it was 90. I think it was 91. No, it was the beginning of 91, I believe. And he gave me and Louis Piccoli, one of my other great students that I trained, he gave us both a $700 check for our performing for him through a series of shows around Long Island and at the Pinta Hotel in Manhattan, and some other things that we did. He gave us each a $700 check and stopped payment on the check. Well, at the time when I came home, I had a 1-year-old son. I was married. I had rent. I had car payments. I had other things. So I'm sending out my bills and everything, sending out my checks. Little did I know that payment was a stop payment. And Herb did that because of myself and Louis Piccoli going to Stamford, Connecticut. We went to visit Terry Garvin, Howard Finkel, some other people in the WWF offices at the time in Stamford. We took the train from New York to Stamford and wanted to visit our friends and say hi. Herb took that as we were betraying his trust as a UWF versus WWF. We betrayed his trust, so he stopped payment on our checks. So that was one time I took a check, and only one other time did I take a check that it failed me. But normally I was paid by cash.
Sean Hurley wants to know if you and the Ultimate Warrior were ever friends. I know you were his trainer, but would you consider him a friend back in those days?
Oh yeah, we were very good friends, and things that people don't even know. Jim came to me for advice a couple times through the years. In the mid, well, let's see, no, it was around 2000-ish. He started a wrestling school in Scottsdale, Arizona, not far from where I live, called Warriors Gym, I believe. And he needed to buy a ring, and he wanted me to set up a ring to be built for him and transported over and set up for him. And I arranged all of that through a man in Los Angeles that I had a ring built from. A guy named Johnny Flores, who built boxing and wrestling rings. He rented them out to movies. He did that for the Rocky movies with Stallone and other movie companies, films that needed rings. Johnny would rent rings to him. Well, I had them design a ring for the Warrior and sent over to Scottsdale, driven over and set up for him. And I negotiated also with Jim to work for. It became a catastrophe, but to work for T.C. Martin in Las Vegas for the NWC in 1995, I believe, or maybe it was 96. And it was just it was just negotiating problems with egos and things like that. Jim had to work with Honky Tonk Man, and there was some issues with billing, top billing, and it was a nightmare that I wished I hadn't gotten involved with. But I negotiated from TC Martin through. I was the middle person to get to the Warrior, and so we communicated through the years. And Jim trusted me always with my judgment.
Now, there's a fan on here, and this is actually true. I just double checked if this is true. What do you think of Billy Graham's name being banned from WWE Thunderdome? They've released the name of banned people that you can't show pictures of. There's a lot of AEW people and Cody Rhodes and Ryback, and I guess Billy Graham's name is on there, even though they just put out a new toy of him.
I find that amazing. I didn't know anything about that. Well, this goes into the same category as their Hall of Fame. It's where the strange hypocrisy is of a man makes you a lot of money and you don't want to use his name, and you ban Hulk Hogan and you do this, you do that, and Billy has always been controversial, and we all know it. And he's had a lot of negative run-ins with talking negatively about WWE events, the whole direction of their company. But I don't know, to deny his name and his reputation, his history, it's ridiculous. I think it's all childish behavior, banning names and that sort of thing. I think it's ridiculous, personally.
I guess he didn't re-sign his Legends deal that expired in September. That probably means.
Well, yeah, I guess that maybe that upset them. Who knows? They're a fickle bunch, It's just a different world we're living in. I don't know, it's crazy out there.
Ricky Rodriguez wants to know if you think Luis Piccoli would still be alive if he wasn't in ECW.
Well, when he passed away, he was working for WCW. I think of Louis, I'll be very honest with you, probably every single day of my life. He's been gone since February 15th of 1998. I think of him all the time. I did a great tribute video to Louis on the 20th anniversary of his death. It's on my YouTube channel called Big Bill Anderson's Life Tours, if somebody wants to look it up. And I was there with Ricky Ataki, another one of my students and Louis' close friends. His death still shocks me and hurts me tremendously. How anybody can let their life get away from them by being so into the pain pills. He was taking so much. He didn't do. He wasn't into heroin, cocaine, all that. Nonetheless, you could still die from prescription pills, obviously, and that's kind of what did him in with the alcohol mixture his final night. But Louis was very depressed. He was not only physically in pain, he was very depressed through relationship problems with past girlfriends, and he was very lonely inside. He was only 27 years old, and he was a good kid. One of the greatest friends I've ever had in my life. I was 10 years older than Louis, and I just cannot say enough nice things about the kid. He was a good person and a good heart and just a talent in the ring and a love for the business like no other.
This is an excellent question because I don't think I've ever heard anyone answer this. Sean wants to know, as a trainer, how would you train the psychology aspect of pro wrestling into your trainees?
Wow, it is a very tough question because I'm very outdated. I closed my wrestling school in 2002. So I'm 18 years out of date as far as the training techniques for people. It's a different business. And what I learned, and I think you've alluded to this sometimes in some of your talking, I've heard you, is the wrestlers nowadays, the young wrestlers, I should say, they wrestle, I feel they wrestle for dressing room approval more than they wrestle for fan approval. Their psychology when they go into the ring now to do a match is, what are the boys in the back thinking of what I'm doing on this move and this move and that move, and how am I impressing my friends in the dressing room versus how am I impressing the fans? Do they even listen to the fans? In my day, in the 70s and 80s, more so than any other time, or than now, I believe the wrestlers paid attention to the fans, and the fans dictated a lot of direction to the match. What worked in the ring and the fans reacted to it, that's what you would continue to do. As a heel or a babyface, you would go that direction to whatever made them happy, not what your friends in the back thought. When I came back, I'll give you an example. I came back to the San Bernardino Arena, to the dressing room one night after a match, and Mr. Universe, Earl Maynard, had done the TV commentary there that night. And when I came back after my match, he was in the dressing room, and Earl was one of my teenage heroes, great wrestler, actor in the Deep and a lot of movies he worked in. So Earl came up to me and he says, "Hey, I want to tell you, you really impressed me, kid. You had a good match." Well, see, that meant something to me, getting that approval from Earl Maynard. But I didn't go into the dressing room seeking, who did anybody see my match? Did anybody like my match? Did you see that move I did? It wasn't that. It was the fans. I wanted the fans to appreciate how hard I worked for them and how much I sacrificed for them, not for the boys in the dressing room. They're not paying my salary. It's the guys, it's the fans, it's the men and women and kids that cheered for me as a babyface or booed me as a heel that I appreciated and worked hard for. And when I got compliments, whether it was from the Golden Greek John Tolis, which I did in the dressing room, hey, that's cool. Right on. I love it. But that's not what I sought out. And I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but I just believe that the psychology is a lot different nowadays in the business.
And the other thing that a lot of them will do these days is run back, find their opponent, take a selfie with them, then post it and tweet it out.
Well,
to kill the mystique off even more.
Yeah, I guess I'm probably fortunate enough. I have taken a lot of selfies with wrestlers myself. I have to admit, I've got about 50, 60,000 pictures in my photo albums. But thank God, I guess it's probably better to say that when I was wrestling, it was before the internet, most of the 99% before the internet. And so I wasn't given that chance to do any of that. So I can't be on that list that did that. So, I took a lot of pictures with people, but they were my friends and everything. It wasn't necessarily the guy I was in the ring with that night at all. Many of those people, I'm sure you've been there before, you actually dislike quite a bit. And whether you were in the ring with them as your tag team partner doesn't make them your friend. It's what the promoter set up. It's not what you set up. So sometimes your own partner isn't your best friend. He might be your worst enemy. And
That's very true. Someone is asking if you were ever friends with Don Morocco.
Well, I can't say friends. I wrestled Don. I was around a lot of shows with Don. Don attended some Cauliflower Alley Club reunions in Studio City, California, in the mid-90s before they moved to Las Vegas starting in 2000. I was around Don quite a bit. I found him a fascinating guy, a hell of a talent, a very nice guy. Again, I could not say a negative thing about Don Morocco. He's been around the business for a long, long time, and a great physique, powerful looking man. He looked the part. Great guy.
Mike wants to know how your interactions were with Vince McMahon over the years.
I had a very professional relationship with Vince probably about 1985 to up to about 1998. I was booking quite a few of my wrestlers on their TV tapings, anywhere from 2 to 18 guys. And Vince treated me always with respect. He knew who I was. He knew I brought talent for him. He was checking out a lot of my talent, seeing Luis Piccoli, and eventually hired him. He was looking at guys. I had just a professional relationship with Vince, not overly friendly, but when he saw me, he said, "Hi, Bill, how are you?" We shake hands. I took a couple pictures with Vince through the years. He was a great guy. And the last time I was really around Vince in San Diego Sports Arena in the mid-90s, I took, I think, 18 guys to do TV tapings down there. That's quite a bit for a trainer to take his wrestlers in there and have them work with the top tier talent. And Vince thanked me at the end of the night. He said, "I cannot thank you enough for enhancing our show, making it as good as it could be." And so, things like that mean a lot. I was friends with also with Shane McMahon, but that was more actually with Shane was through Luis Piccoli. Shane and Louis were very tight friends, and I became a little bit close with Shane only because of Louis's relationship with him.
Now, I remember being used as an extra for that pay-per-view WWE did in Phoenix in 2006. You were back there with Billy. I'm sure you don't remember meeting me that day, but I remember that was the first time I ever saw Billy, and I was
Oh man. Well, I'm so embarrassed that I don't remember you from that. I can only tell you I can't wait for when this COVID thing opens up and we can, the three of us, you, me, and Billy, can get together and have some serious Mexican food. I mean, I saw the video you did with him at the Chinese restaurant. I've been there with Billy too, the arm wrestling. But I want us to go out and have some great food and camaraderie and fellowship. But I'm sorry, Devin, I didn't remember seeing you there. I was really trying to block wrestling out a lot, you know.
I was only asking you because I think that may have been one of the last times you were backstage. So I was only bringing that up because how was that day for you?
It became a different business. And I remember at one show, I was only at about 3 WWE shows in the early 2000s here in Phoenix and Glendale area of Phoenix. And one of the shows I was talking to Earl Hebner, and the great referee Earl. And I said to Earl, I said, you know what, Earl, I'm looking around here at all the boys coming through to go out to the ring. And I says, I don't know any of them anymore. And he says, Billy, I don't either. It's just our old school thought. I mean, Gene Snitsky was there, and Gene and I had been overseas to the Middle East and the Pacific a couple of times. For months at a time, we've been on the road together. So I knew Snitsky, or Gene Snitsky. He was a very nice guy and a good friend of mine. So Snitsky came up and he said hello. And Billy introduced me. I think Triple H was on one of the shows or something. He introduced me. But you know, and Randy Orton too. I didn't know Randy. I've known his dad. My God, Cowboy Bob, one of the nicest men you'd ever meet in your life, wrestled Bob, and just a tremendous guy. I've known Bob for 35 years, but I'd never met Randy. And so I met Randy and I met a couple of the guys, but I felt very, very foreign. One show I went to, I think Chavo Guerrero Jr. was on it, and maybe Rey Mysterio. And I said hello to those guys because they were old friends, the Guerrero family, of course. And I've known Rey Mysterio Jr. since he was 15 years old, wrestling in Mexico, when he was about 110 pounds with no tattoos on his body. I've known that kid, and he wrestled as Colibri.
Wow, that's a long time. David Hanna wants to know how you found out the business was a work.
Very good question. And David Hanna, by the way, is one of my students too, and he was a great young man. Him and his brother John, I have a lot of great memories on the road with. I can tell you when I found out the business was a work was here in Phoenix in 1973. I was asked to referee some matches for Kurt Von Steiger, who was my trainer at the time. And I was not smartened up through training. I was training with Afa of the Wild Samoans and Bobby Jaggers. I was not smartened up. I mean, we hit each other, and we hit each other hard. And that was part of the routine back there by a lot of old timers to see if you had it in you to come back and battle back. And I did, because I wanted to be a professional wrestler. So it came a point when I needed to referee, and the referee became a key point of a match. And Chris Colt, who eventually became my tag team partner, one of the most underrated wrestlers ever, or I should say entertainers, performers. I know you don't like the word entertainer, but performers. He knew how to work a crowd more than anybody. He had ring psychology above and beyond. And Colt came up to me and he said that in the dressing room before a match that I was refereeing. He says, Bill, I need to talk to you. And I says, what about? He says, are you going to be let down if you find out the business isn't all that you thought it was? And I go, I don't understand what you're saying. And I mean, I was just like, it was like a foreign language coming into my brain. And he says, it's not quite what you're thinking it is, but you need to understand what it is. And he explained that you need to do certain things in this match as a referee that don't make a lot of sense to you, but they're going to make sense to the fans of the match and the way it has to happen. So I was broken in like that, but it wasn't even through training. It was through refereeing that I was smartened up.
Any advice for referees out there? Because I notice there isn't too many great referees on the independent scene the past 10 years or so that I've run into.
It's hard. It's hard to offer a lot of advice for that. One of my students, one of my great referees that I helped train was Rick Knox, who is a great referee for AEW. Is that what it's called? AEW. He's their referee, one of their main referees. Rick has been refereeing for 25 years, since 95, I believe. We started Rick, myself and Jesse Hernandez in San Bernardino, California. And we broke Rick in, and Rick has gone on to work for major companies. He's under contract with AEW, and it's a tough job. You have to just learn how to listen, and I don't know. It helps to learn a little bit of wrestling too, because you have to take some bumps sometimes. You have to learn how to fall, and it's hard to offer a lot of advice, to be real honest with you, and especially the way the business is now.
David 2099 wants to know if you were asked to be a trainer in Florida for WWE's developmental system, what would you say?
In all honesty, I'd probably say no. I would probably, because I don't think I'm up on the current product enough. I have old school beliefs and old school mentality that I don't know. When I was running my school in 2000 and 2001, I started seeing the shift in the mindset of younger people. Of, like I was saying earlier, they perform for each other and not for the fans. It's real hard to get it through their brain, and especially somebody at my age telling a 20-year-old how to act in the ring. It's hard to make them understand that these are from years of wisdom and learning the hard way what works and what don't work. But it's hard to make a kid understand that that's the direction they should go and need to go. And if they don't go, then you feel disrespected and you feel hurt. And I went through a lot of that in the final days I was running my school. I was training guys like Frankie Kazarian, Los Cubanitos, Ricky Reyes, and these guys. There was a lot of students that came through my school, and they just didn't really understand. I took kids over on a 1-month tour of the Middle East with Gene Snitsky and the One Man Gang and the Honky Tonk Man and these guys. And I had to get on my kids because they thought they were superstars, and they were forgetting their place, that they're just youngsters in their rookie year of wrestling. But I got them an overseas gig for 1 month, making $1,000 a week. So they made $4,000 in a month, these 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And the promoter, Tom Reeder, who managed this, Tom Shade, with his promotion, he did a lot of shows on military bases. He asked my young guys to help take a ring down in South Korea at a military base. And my guys, 5 of them that I took, one was a referee and 4 wrestlers, all balked at the idea that they help take a ring down because they are superstars. That was the mentality. As much as I tried to show them and tell them and explain to them and teach them that you are young kids and you still have to learn from the bottom up of this business. And they disrespected the promoter and me until I had to physically threaten them to help with the ring, to help Tom Shade out of respect for him, to tear the ring down and disassemble it. So, I found then it was a different mentality of younger people that I just lost faith in to train. And that's what I would feel I was walking back into if I was to go to Florida or somewhere like that. I lost a lot of faith in my fellow man to learn, because I don't think they have the sincere love for the business to learn every aspect of the business like I did, being a referee, ring announcer, tearing rings down, setting them up, driving thousands of miles. I drove rings from LA to Seattle. I drove a ring from LA to Chicago for Paul Alperstein's AWF promotion. These are things you sacrifice and do because you love the business. And I believe I did love the business, and I showed that in everything I did and put my body on the line. And I just believe that the mentality isn't quite there. That's just my opinion. I could very well be wrong. It's just the way I think nowadays.
You've actually had a few questions on here about Iron Mike Sharp. He's become a popular subject on this channel. Any experiences with him?
Yeah, I wrestled Mike several times. I liked Mike. He had a work ethic like very few. I know his father, Mike Sharp. Red Bastien had a ring built by Mike Sharp, the father of Iron Mike. And I was over at Mike Sharp's house, and I know Mike Sr. did not want Mike Sharp Jr. to be a professional wrestler. He wanted him to go into law enforcement like his other son did, and he wanted him to go a different direction in life. And kind of like, I guess, the Bruno David San Martino thing. There was some dispute there about, following my footsteps type thing. Well, Mike Sharp, I was in the ring with Mike too. And Mike was a tough wrestler. I mean, when he hit you with a forearm, you felt it for a couple of days. And I wrestled Mike day in and day out many, many, many times. And Mike was tough. And I can tell you something else that very few, probably hardly anybody knows. In the dressing room, Mike would arrive at a show. Let's say the show started at 8 o'clock. Mike would be in the dressing room at 5 o'clock in the evening, and he would be doing Hindu squats, push-ups, jumping jacks. He'd do it until his match started. And then when he got done with in the ring, he would come back and he would still work out in the dressing room doing calisthenics. Not only him, but Bob Backlund was the same way. And people that knock Bob Backlund, I have just a different direction of level of respect for Bob Backlund. And I know our mutual friend Billy has his opinion of Bob. I just look at it a little different. But Mike Sharp, getting back to Mike, I had a lot of respect for Mike. Mike was a very nice man, and I know he died under very poor circumstances. But I had nothing but respect for Mike. I wrestled him many times, and I liked him a lot. And just he was the ultimate professional wrestler to me.
We're seeing a lot of companies pop up these days. Charles wants to know if you think the territories could ever return.
No, I don't see that, honestly. I mean, I am very much removed from the business, but I don't see it like it used to be. I can just tell you, as an old fan of wrestling, when I see lineup sheets, like on Facebook, people post from Detroit, where I'm from, and I see lineup sheets from Detroit or Atlanta, Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland, whatever, I get so excited from the 70s and 80s because these wrestlers were bigger than life. Ox Baker, Dick the Bruiser, it just, Mike Graham or Eddie Graham in Florida, and every area, Jose Lothario in Texas and the Von Erichs, everybody had their area of, there were national stars, and regional stars before they became national with expansion. But it was a different business, and I don't see it going back that way, honestly.
You mentioned a lot of places you've wrestled there. Sean wants to know, in your opinion, what is the best wrestling city in the United States? He picks Pittsburgh.
Well, I never wrestled in Pittsburgh. I always wanted to. One city I always wished I would have wrestled, and I never had a chance to, was Detroit at Cobo Arena, where I grew up and went to a lot of matches with my dad. My dad was not a wrestling fan, but he would take me. But I feel Los Angeles. I had a lot of good runs there in Los Angeles at the Olympic Auditorium and in the Los Angeles Sports Arena. I have a lot of great memories of those buildings. Wrestling a lot of my childhood heroes, John Tolis, one of the toughest professional wrestlers ever. and I got to wrestle John at the Olympic Auditorium and wrestling Mil Mascaras, and people like that I grew up idolizing as a teenager. I feel Los Angeles, in my case, was my region. And I know everybody that starts out in different cities have their own favorites and everything. But I'd say LA.
That's definitely got to be one of the cities you hear pretty often from the various wrestlers I interview. Mr. Wicked 505 is asking if you have any advice on how to get into being a ring announcer.
Wow. That is tough. That's another kind of tough question. I think basically you have to get in with a promotion. You have to start working small. Get in with a local wrestling promoter and watch a lot of video of men like the late great Howard Finkel, one of the nicest guys, one of the greatest ring announcers ever on the face of the earth, or watch some old Jimmy Lennon from Los Angeles. These are guys that I was around quite a bit. Lee Marshall was a fantastic ring announcer before he went to AWA and became a commentator. But Lee in LA was one of the greats. You need to watch how their mannerisms, their pronunciation of names and wording, how they act in the ring and how they handle themselves. But I would get in with a local promotion and start out very small so you can make your mistakes in front of very small crowds. And believe me, you can always make mistakes. And you're in front of a live crowd, so you have to be very careful not to make those mistakes. But you need to start out small and work your way up, but get in with a small group. No different than if you were starting a band, a rock and roll band. You don't just become Led Zeppelin or the Beatles. I just dated myself, didn't I? So you don't become those guys overnight. You start in little clubs in front of 10 people and 20 people getting drunk. It's the same way in ring announcing. You're going to have to start small and work your way up and learn your craft and be able to pronounce your words right and have a good voice and a good look. At the time I was slim and trim and lost those days. I had no gray hair at all back in those days. And so it's all in how you handle yourself. But having gray hair doesn't mean anything. But Jimmy Lennon made a career of that, and one of the greatest ring announcers of Los Angeles history. So it's just a matter of getting experience and starting small and learning. But watch old videos.
More important to have hair than have gray hair, because I haven't seen too many bald ring announcers over the years. We know you're a bit of a ribber. You told some stories in the last interview, but someone's asking if you've ever been the victim of a Mr. Fuji rib.
By Mr. Fuji? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, by Mr. Fuji, or if not Mr. Fuji, maybe someone else.
Well, I could, yeah, actually I was in a way. I not by Mr. Fuji ever. I had a good relationship with Mr. Fuji. I was around him quite a bit, especially when he was with Don Morocco and other people in the ring, or whoever he was managing back in those days in the 80s and everything. I never wrestled Mr. Fuji, but I was around him as a manager. Oh, he was around Pat Tanaka and Paul Diamond and Akio Sato, I think it was the Japanese team. So anyway, but I was played a rib on it. And I don't know if I mentioned this the last time, is when I used to do a Vince McMahon imitation in my younger days, especially when I was in a tuxedo and I had dark hair. And I used to have a nice little bout of hair. I like my hair real short nowadays, but I used to have it combed back. And some people, especially Dino Bravo, he always said I look like Vince McMahon. So I would do a Vince McMahon imitation in the dressing room, especially like in Los Angeles Sports Arena before the show. And I'm standing there and I'm going, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm trying to act like Vince. And little did I know, Dino Bravo knew it, that Vince was coming into the dressing room and he was standing off to the side. And Vince, I turned around as I'm doing my Vince imitation, and Dino knew it and didn't stop me. And Vince was standing right there while I was doing, your SummerSlam checks will be in the mail, guys, and that sort of thing. And I was quite embarrassed by that and had to apologize to Vince. And Vince told me He says, you know what? No offense taken. He says, anything that gets a chuckle out of the guys and makes them laugh on the road. I want my boys happy. I don't want them sad. I'd rather have a happy group of wrestlers laughing in the dressing room than being mad and bickering about things. So he says, I didn't take offense at your imitation of me. But Dino knew that Vince was right there listening to everything I was saying. So I kind of got caught off guard there.
Somebody earlier in the chat was actually asking you if you had any Dino Bravo stories. That's one, of course, but were you friends with him back there?
I was friends with Dino, but not overly friendly. No reason why. It's when you're in the moment, you're around such quality guys, you don't understand and take advantage of the time you're with these men, especially when you realized years later they're no longer with us. And I don't have any real other Dino Bravo stories. I can just tell you, I love the guy, being around him. He was a friendly guy, always laughing, always in a good mood. And I miss Dino. I miss knowing he's alive. I think his death was just so insane. It bothers me. It's one of those top 10 wrestling tragedies of wrestlers, along with Bruiser Brody or Owen Hart and those kind of guys, that you say, my God, something should have been done or could have happened differently to have this man still with us. I really miss Dino. He was a consummate professional.
Big Beefs 35 is asking if you have any thoughts on Billy Jack Haynes, who is really popular on this channel.
I was around Billy quite a bit back in his WWF days and in Herb Abrams' UWF. No real stories on Billy. I mean, again, I admired him, respected him. He treated everybody with respect in the dressing room. I was around him a lot when he was working with Hercules Hernandez, doing those full Nelson matches back in the I don't even know, the 80s, I guess. And no real Billy Jack stories. He was just a fantastic guy to be around all the time. And that's about all.
Adrian from the UK wants to know your thoughts on Earthquake, John Tinta, another guy that passed away very young.
John was a very, very, very nice man. And John used to always laugh with me. First of all, I want to say, if you ever stood behind John Tinta, you'd see, even in all due respect to Andre the Giant, you would see one of the largest backs you've ever seen on a human being from shoulder to shoulder. John Tinta was a very large man. But John used to always laugh to me because he had worked for Michelle Starr's promotion up in Vancouver, Washington, or Vancouver, Canada, I'm sorry, and years before. And he used to say, "Hey, you hear from Michelle Starr?" And we used to always joke about that because Michelle Starr, Mark Velios, his real name, is one of my students too. One of my first students back in the 80s after Sting Warrior became Mark Velios, and then Ricky Ataki, and then eventually Louis Piccoli, and all through the mid 80s. So I had a bond with Tinta because of our relationship with Michelle Starr. But John was a tremendous, nice man. I never wrestled him, but I did ring announcing for him and refereed matches for him. And I found John to be an amazing human, good family man, a fantastic family man, and taken from us way too soon. Miss John quite a bit. When I think of John, I think of his smile, always smiling.
My dog came in to say hi to everybody.
Hey.
The fans like to see her. Well, I really appreciate your time tonight and answering the fans' questions. Do you want to remind people where they can pick up this great book or your other book?
Yeah. Either of these books are available at www.bigbillanderson.us. And I will make sure they are all signed appropriately to you, and they are mailed by me. I appreciate anyone purchasing the book and learning a little bit of different history. It's old school stuff. It's guys that are gone, but meant the world to me. You know, Jack Briscoe, one of the greatest NWA world champions of all time, one of the great workers, nicest men. You know, there's Bruiser Brody, you know, Andre the Giant, you know, guys like that. And one of the greatest compliments I've ever had was when Barbara Goodish, Frank's widow, came up to me in Las Vegas several years back, and she says, "You're Bill Anderson. I've wanted to meet you. You did a story on my husband in your book, and I wanted to thank you for that." And that meant the world to me, coming from Barbara Goodish. So things like that are real important to me, getting that kind of feedback from somebody like Barbara. And I appreciate anybody taking the time for my book. And I thank you, Devin, it's been 6 months since I was on your show when you interviewed me last. And I appreciate it. I appreciate the time to come on. And I hope I don't sound a little too outdated from everybody that you have on. I know you have a lot of older wrestlers on. I mean, Kevin Sullivan, I know, and a lot of guys that have been around a long, long time. But you have a lot of newer talent on too. And I'm just not as much into the newer scene as I maybe could be or should be, but I'm a little old school, you know.
And you have a ton of pictures, as you've mentioned, and people can follow you on Facebook if they want to see your posts, where you probably post at least 3 times a day, some of these rare pictures.
Yeah, I have a lot of pictures, and I have so many pictures I haven't even scanned to put on my Facebook that I need to do. And it's a big major process for me. As I've gotten older, it's harder for me to find the motivation, quite honestly, to do a lot of things. And doing things like this with you helped me a lot. You even took my mind off the presidential race for the last hour, which is quite amazing, because that's what's been on my mind for months on end coming into tonight. So, but anybody that wants to buy my book, www.bigbillanderson.us. And I do have a YouTube channel that I need to update and get some videos out, but it's Big Bill Anderson's Life Tours. Appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. And I have, I've been to like Yokozuna's grave. He's in the same cemetery as Louis Piccoli. And I've been to Joe Cocker, great rock and roll singer in Colorado. I went to his grave in Colorado. And Doc Holliday and several other people, the Earp brothers. And also, I just want to mention real fast, I'm going on a trip later this month in 3 weeks. I'm going to Seattle to Bruce Lee's grave. I will be at his grave on his 80th birthday. And I'll be at Jimi Hendrix's grave, one of the great guitar players of all time. And I'm going to Portland to Roddy Piper, my dear, 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 dear friend's grave. And I'm going to pay my respects to Roddy. And Virgil Earp, my final Earp brother, that I have not been to his grave. I've been to Wyatt and all the other brothers. And Lyle Alzado and several other people. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I've got more content coming on my YouTube channel. And I'm just getting my motivation.
Speaking of Piper, my dog is named after him. She's actually named Piper, and I interviewed his daughter, Teal, not too long ago, and she said she'd be her honorary godmother. So that would be a blessing. I'll slip in one more question, because we've had this name pop up a few times. PWC 24/7 wants to know if you have anything about Rick Martel to share.
Oh, I could just say Rick is another guy that's the consummate professional. The last time I saw Rick was maybe about 5 years ago at a Cauliflower Alley Club reunion in Las Vegas, and Rick is just in phenomenal shape. He thinned down a lot, but he's cut up and ripped. He looks like he could run a marathon. And my mouth was just hanging open, staring at him, saying, Rick. And I told him, I said, Rick, you look fantastic. I mean, you look as good, or if not better than you did 30 years ago. You look great. And, but I've always had a lot of respect. Rick was just a fantastic wrestler, one of the greats, a very good person, a good hard worker in the ring. I never had a chance to wrestle Rick, but I have nothing but respect for Rick Martel, one of the fantastic guys.
And to close this off, I was wondering, since I've never heard you announce superstar Billy Graham, if you could pretend you were announcing him to the ring for us to put you on the spot.
Oh, okay. Well, I haven't done ring announcing in many, many years, and you can see my face is going to turn red. I would just say something like, ladies and gentlemen from Paradise Valley, Arizona, superstar Billy Graham.